Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to EFA171 on this Wednesday, September 9th. We need joint task force now. And I mean now, like right now. And when I say joint task force, I'm talking government and industry. And I know there's a lot of them out there. And some of the best committees I've ever been on were joint forces of industry and government and so forth. And that's because they don't understand each other. And I'll tell you right now, they're two different realms. Fortunately, I had the lifetime experience of having 27 years in government and simultaneously 30 years of business, right? And different types of business. But I had that opportunity to get to become cross-minded, right? Cross marketing, same thing, cross-minded. I understand both worlds really, really well, and they're completely separate and apart from each other. And I've done whole podcasts on that. But when I'm talking about task force now, yesterday, a 40-year established business in Ottawa here in Canada. They're a fitness center, and it touched home because a lot of people that I know, this is a big fitness center. They were one of the icons. They even went to court to defend their name because of all these big box businesses that come in all the time now. And they were 40 years established in our city, and I mean they were one of the first that I know of in this area, maybe even bigger than that would offer that big type gym format with all these different categories. You can play squash there, you can play tennis there, you can swim there, you can bike there. There was so many things you can do there, right? And there's stores and that kind of stuff. It was massages, physiotherapy, everything. It was one of those places, and they closed yesterday. And when I say they're an icon, they're an icon. And that one touched home for whatever reason. Yesterday I was reading that, and maybe because I was an ex-member there, maybe because I know it was a heartbeat in our city when it comes to health and wellness. And there's something about that place that I know is a finger on the pulse when it comes to health and wellness in our cities. And I look at our city, and that's not a good thing. And I look at our country, and that's not a good thing, right? When you start seeing all these entities, 40 years established, right? There's companies in this country, and I know it's in your countries also, that have survived depressions and wars that are closed. And that tells you how big government is. And I've said this to people before, government is so big with so many hands in your pockets that this is how fragile industry is, that they can't survive 3 months, 6 months. The industries that went through wars and depressions, think about that for a second, can't survive this because government is too big. And that's what I tell people all the time. And this is good for government also. I'm not knocking government because I could speak from government's voice, right? But there's a giant need for a task force right now that I want to get into. And when you hear about the defunding and all that stuff, it's because, people know, there's industries that know that 80-90% of all money collected from government taxation and fees and so forth goes to pension, benefits, and salaries, right? A lot of big industries and a lot of big money is collected for pension, benefits, and salary. People know that, and that's why the whole defunding and the whole nine yards, all these campaigns. And a very wise, very older gentleman said to me when they were talking with, and this is a few years ago actually, we're talking about this, and this man here, I think he's in his 90s, and he's like, go every day. Complete respect, I tip my hat off to him. And he said to me one time, what happens when we get to 100%? Right, think about that. What happens when we get to 100%? And I'm going to get into that in a moment. And then when you look at where we are tax base wise in this country, I think we're already into August before you start making any money. That's the calculation. You gotta live up until August. Actually, you're actually earning your money, and then we're in like that 60% bracket. And he talks about that. We're in a 70% tax bracket, 80% tax bracket, etc. What happens then, right? And this is the world we're in right now. Because of COVID has proven that this is too big. And this is how fragile the economy is. This is how fragile this is. And this is where I'm getting down here, guys. The government world has no comprehension of funds in the business sense. Okay? There's finance and there's revenue and all that stuff. They're very knowledgeable on your funds, right? But when I'm looking at government as a whole, when I look at my 27 years, the conversations are different, right? When I say there's no comprehension of funds in the business sense, they don't talk about, are we going to make payroll? There's no conversations like that, right? There's no conversations of your net, and I don't want to get into the particulars, but when you're in government, remember, government works off it, like I said it here, system runs on a debt of billions, and it's going to be trillions. When you look at a federal debt, it's going to go into the trillion with a T, or capital T, right? So they are running their systems, their payroll and so forth off of debt. So no company runs that way, right? First of all, no company runs where you're 80, think about that. Imagine running your company right now where 80% of all your income that comes in went to salaries. You wouldn't be in business, right? It'd be like a lead balloon. It was just like bada boom, bada bing, done, right? And also, when I go into the system, they're running off of debt. So you can't run your business off of debt. Hence, they're closing businesses left, right, and center because you got to run a business off profit, right? And you have a system that's running their system off of debt. You comprehend what I'm getting at here. So with the revenue of businesses, so their government is running their business with the revenue of businesses, but they're running their business on a debt, continuous debt. So it doesn't matter to them. They're in debt, right? So they just don't fail because they're always running on a debt. But businesses are collapsing right now. And that's what's happening, right? Our system is so big that the businesses can't survive several months right now. And I'm going to get into a moment what's happening in the winter months. And then this is where I talk about governments are too big. And I'm not talking about laying them off. And I'm going to do attrition. Start the process now. This is why these task forces are needed. Start the process now to downsize government across the board. And I say this because it's needed. We're proving it. The sauce is in the friggin', and it's in you're stirring the pot right now. You're sipping it. You're realizing it. We're too heavy in government. Everything's starting to collapse. Everything's starting to fail, et cetera, right? And we're going into the winter month. And I've talked about this before. Like the doom and gloom of, remember, COVID happened in March, right? And by summer, everybody's like, thank God for summer, right? Thank goodness for summer, right? We're going to go into October now. This is the cold weather's coming, the rainy seasons, that kind of stuff. And that's going to last all the way to June again, May, April maybe, just like last COVID. But now you're doubling it, right? You're not going from March to April, May, June here. Now you're going from, it could even start now, September, October, cold, flu season, sniffle seasons, all that stuff. Now you're going to have a whole major platform of it. You're going to have a lot more lockdowns and those kind of things, and spikes and this and spikes and that. And there's a lot of good things that's going to happen from all this stuff that I'm going to talk about on a different podcast. But the bad, it might get worse, right? It might get worse. So when I look at governments are too big, I'm talking about attrition here. Start task forcing now. Start downsizing your governments now. Start thinking before we start hitting the wall. We're going to hit the wall. Let's have a meeting. No, you project that freaking wall. That's how business works. And then when I'm looking at these companies that are closing, the next 6 months of what your task force won't help any of these companies that are going to close now in 2021. And hopefully that you have it so a task force that can comprehend this mindset that's going on right now, so that by 2022 you've saved some companies, or by maybe midway through 2021 you've saved some companies, right? Because all these funds that were dishing out on all these paychecks and these monthly things, and all, that's all going to stop, right? Unless you go to across the board your vision of giving everybody a salary or something, get that started because people are going to need it. So it's either you're going to stop this money and have a task force to see the solution, or you better put everybody, every Canadian or every American or every citizen on this planet on a salary and start that now, because you're actually affecting a lot of lives and families. So when I'm talking about government is too big, and the attrition is needed, and this task force, that's why that's needed, because they're buckling at the knees. Do you know that pig at the trough, and then eventually it gets so big, right? And it wobbles. It wobbles. It doesn't. Some of them don't even wobble. They just collapse into them because they buckle at the knees, right? They get so big that they die or they buckle at the knees. And that's what's going to happen to our big governments. Eventually they're going to burst. And the reason why they burst is because of all these companies go bankrupt. And when all these companies start going bankrupt, like Kerplunk, and everybody starts failing across the board, then government has no choice but to start doing attrition. And that's exactly what happens. So before we go there, how about you start that process now so that you avoid the millions of bankruptcies that you're probably projecting already. Jean-Guy Bourguignon, EFA171.